In the mid-1990s, after a string of large-budget animated epics, Disney's leadership sought to replicate the spirit of Dumbo, a simple, heartfelt story made with a modest budget. Then, Disney CEO Michael Eisner and animation president Thomas Schumacher discussed creating the Dumbo for our generation, a director-driven film that wasn't huge or complicated, giving animators more creative control. Story artist Chris Sanders was chosen to spearhead this project. Sanders had originated the character of Stitch as early as 1985 for a children's book concept about a mischievous creature seeking belonging, but he had shelved it when the idea proved too large for a 24-page book. Now he revisited this concept for a feature film, envisioning an outsider creature finding family on Earth. 17 years prior to me even pitching Lilo and Stitch, I wanted to do a children's book about this little creature that lived in a forest. It was all about how he found a way to belong, Sanders recalled. This abandoned idea became the seed for Lilo and Stitch's story. Originally, Sanders imagined Stitch's tale set in a rural American location, even considering Kansas, to keep the story in a remote, small-town atmosphere. Schumacher, however, urged him to place the alien among humans rather than forest animals. An alien among animals is not as remarkable as an alien among humans, and to find a setting more visually vibrant than a green forest. Sanders soon had a revelation. He could set the story in Hawaii, an environment Disney had never explored in animation. He had a map of Hawaii from a recent vacation and began picking place names from it for his characters. Lilo and Nani were names he spotted on a Hawaiian road map. Moving the story to the island of Kauai proved transformational. Animation has been set so much in ancient medieval Europe. To place it in Hawaii was kind of a big leap, but that choice went on to color the entire movie and rewrite the story for us, Sanders explained. Indeed, the lush tropical setting introduced new story elements, from surfing and hula dancing to the Hawaiian concept of Ohana, extended family, that would become the film's emotional core. Sanders and co-director Dean DeBlois, who had been co-head of story on Mulan in 1998, took research trips to Kauai to immerse themselves in the culture. There, a local tour guide taught them about Ohana, the idea that family extends beyond blood relations. No matter where we went, our tour guide seemed to know somebody. He was the one who explained to us the Hawaiian concept of Ohana, a sense of family that extends far beyond your immediate relatives. That idea so influenced the story that it became the foundation theme, DeBlois recalled. Embracing Ohana sharpened the film's focus on broken but loving family relationships. The story was centered on young Lilo Pelikai, a lonely Hawaiian girl being raised by her 19-year-old sister after their parents' death, and how an alien dog she names Stitch disrupts and ultimately heals their little family. Notably, Lilo and Stitch places the bond between sisters at its heart, a unique aspect in American animated films where sibling relationships had rarely taken center stage. The lack of a traditional villain further set the story apart. While there are antagonists, like the alien Captain Gantu or social worker Cobra Bubbles, none are outright evil. The real conflicts arise from Stitch's destructive programming and the sisters' struggle to remain together. This offbeat, intimate tale of outsiders becoming a family was a departure from Disney's fairy tale formula, and it would ultimately become one of the studio's most personal and original stories. Animation techniques and artistic style. From the outset, Sanders and DeBlois envisioned a distinct look for Lilo and Stitch that matched its heartfelt storybook-like quality. They made the bold decision to use old-fashioned watercolor-painted backgrounds throughout the film. This was a significant break from modern Disney practice. True watercolor hadn't been used in a Disney feature's background since the 1940s, in classics like Snow White, Pinocchio, and Dumbo. Most subsequent films used opaque gouache or acrylics, which are easier to correct and reproduce. But Lilo and Stitch's art director, Rick Sluter, suggested that the soft, vibrant look of watercolor would be the perfect complement to the film's rounded character style and island setting. Both directors enthusiastically agreed, even after being warned that watercolor is an extraordinarily difficult medium for production art. Watercolors require great care. Artists can't simply paint over mistakes. So Disney's Florida studio undertook months of training workshops to relearn this nearly lost art. Veteran background artist Peter Murrell, one of the few with watercolor expertise, helped teach the team. Despite initial skepticism from the main studio in Burbank, "Nobody's done this since the 1940s. You're not going to be able to pull it off," one senior animator cautioned. The Florida artists rose to the challenge. In fact, they became so skilled that they produced watercolor backgrounds faster than they used to produce gouache backgrounds by the end of production. The result is a film with a uniquely lush and handcrafted look. The translucent washes of color in the skies, beaches, and verdant mountains of Kauai give Lilo and Stitch a dreamy storybook atmosphere, perfectly fitting its tone. Stitch reads the ugly duckling to ducklings in a tender scene. The film's art style used old-fashioned watercolor backgrounds, last seen in Disney's 1940s features, and round, exaggerated character designs based on Chris Sanders' personal drawing style. This blend of soft backgrounds and expressive characters created a warm, storybook feel that set the film apart. Equally distinctive were the character designs and animation approach. Rather than the angular, realistic proportions typical of many 90s Disney films, Lilo and Stitch's characters have a rounded, whimsical style drawn directly from Chris Sanders' own art influences. Lilo, Nani, and Stitch are drawn with exaggerated, curved forms and large, soulful eyes, lending them a cartoony charm and emotional expressiveness. Animators usually had to adapt to Sanders' unique style, essentially learning a new model for drawing characters. To assist with consistency, the team even created an internal Sanders-style guide so that every scene maintained the same look. The film was animated in traditional hand-drawn 2D. By the early 2000s, Disney often mixed in computer graphics for complex elements, but this project's tighter budget meant Lilo and Stitch contains almost no CGI. The few exceptions were minor. For example, elements like spaceships were hand-drawn but enhanced with some computer coloring effects. Animators also deliberately simplified details to save time and money. Characters' clothing has no elaborate patterns or even pockets, and many scenes are lit in flat daylight or shade so that animators could avoid drawing complex shadows, except in crucial moments. Despite these limitations, the animation is fluid and full of life. From Stitch's elastic, dog-like antics to the nuances of body language between sisters. In a clever touch, the film's alien spaceship designs were inspired by marine life. Ships resemble whales and crabs, subtly tying the sci-fi elements back to the island theme. Music and color further enriched the artistic style. The filmmakers chose to incorporate the music of Elvis Presley as a quirky character point. Lilo is an Elvis fanatic, and to evoke the retro Hawaiian vacation vibe, a nod to Presley's own Hawaii-filmed movie, Blue Hawaii. The soundtrack features several Elvis songs, from Heartbreak Hotel to Burning Love, integrated humorously into the story. These are blended with traditional Hawaiian elements. For example, the film opens with a lively native language chant at a hula school, He Mele no Lilo, and includes the authentic song Aloha O, creating a genuine Hawaiian atmosphere. Composer Alan Silvestri provided the instrumental score, weaving in Hawaiian percussion and string influences to complement the Presley tunes. All of these artistic decisions, the watercolor vistas, the rounded character animation, the mix of Hawaiian and 1950s rock music, gave Lilo and Stitch a flavor unlike any other Disney film of its era. Critics noted that its hand-drawn characters and use of watercolors for backgrounds, the first time the studio's done that since the 1940s, make it a happy throwback to an earlier Disney style. Yet the film also feels fresh and unconventional in its design. Key people and their contributions. The success of Lilo and Stitch was very much a team effort by a small but passionate crew. Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois served as the film's co-writers and co-directors, marking their directorial debuts. Sanders was the creative originator. Besides conceiving the story, he even provided the scratchy, emotive voice of Stitch himself, bringing his own creation to life with ad-libbed gibberish and occasional English words. Stitch's few lines, like the famous "Ohana means family," are voiced by Sanders. Co-director DeBlois was Sanders' close collaborator. The two had previously worked together on Mulan, and they reunited to shape Lilo and Stitch's story and oversee its production. Clark Spencer produced the film, managing the budget and schedule while protecting the director's vision. Notably, the project was primarily made at Disney's Florida Animation Studio at Walt Disney World, rather than the main Burbank studio. This physical distance allowed the core team, roughly a few hundred artists, far fewer than Disney's typical feature crew, to work with unusual freedom and intimacy. Sanders likened it to being a spy plane built at a secret hangar with a very elite group of people, describing the tight-knit Florida studio as magic because it operated outside the usual corporate oversight. The small pre-production team stayed isolated from heavy executive intervention until the film was well along. According to Spencer, they only showed footage to higher-ups at carefully chosen moments, once the movie's tone was clear, to avoid the project being reshaped by committee. This strategy paid off in preserving the film's unique identity. On the artistic side, several Disney veterans and rising talents contributed to Lilo and Stitch's distinctive animation. Renowned supervising animator Andreas Deja, known for iconic Disney villains like Scar and Jafar, took a surprising turn by overseeing the animation of Lilo Pelikai. Deja was excited to animate a young heroine for once, and he embraced Sanders' unconventional character designs. She and the other characters were designed by Chris Sanders, so the animators just needed to adapt to this unusual and charming style, Deja noted of Lilo's look. His animation of Lilo captures a real child's awkward movements and emotive expressions, grounding the fantasy in believable behavior. For the character of Stitch, Alex Cooperschmidt was the lead animator, sometimes affectionately called the supervising animator of Stitch. Cooperschmidt and his team gave Stitch an animalistic yet endearing quality. Stitch scampers on all fours, flips from destructive whirlwind to cuddly pet on a dime, and gradually acquires more gentle, dog-like mannerisms as he adapts to family life. Other key animators included Stéphane Sainte-Foy, who supervised Lilo's sister Nani, and Dominic Carolla and Ruben A. Aquino, who worked on supporting characters. Animators had to coordinate closely to maintain the fluid, rounded look. A Florida cleanup artist even developed new techniques to keep the line art consistent with Sanders' drawings. Meanwhile, effects animators under Joseph Gilland handled everything from water splashes in the surfing scenes to spaceship energy blasts, blending the whimsical with the sci-fi. The voice cast of Lilo and Stitch was carefully chosen to bring authenticity and heart to the characters. Young actress Davey Chase voiced Lilo, infusing the character with genuine childlike energy and emotion. Chase was only 11-12 during recording, the same age as Lilo, which helped make Lilo's enthusiastic outbursts and melancholy moments feel very real. Hawaiian-born actress Tia Carrere played Nani, Lilo's harried older sister, and Jason Scott Lee, who grew up in Hawaii, voiced Nani's friend David. Both Carrere and Lee drew on their heritage to imbue the characters' dialogue with true local flavor. They even helped rewrite some of Nani and David's lines into proper Hawaiian pidgin dialect and added slang for realism. This contribution made the depiction of native Hawaiian characters more authentic and respectful. Other supporting roles were filled by a diverse, talented group. Ving Rhames lent his deep, intimidating voice to the social worker Cobra Bubbles, a former CIA agent character with tongue-in-cheek nods to Men in Black. David Ogden Stiers voiced the eccentric alien scientist Jumba. Kevin McDonald, of Kids in the Hall fame, voiced the one-eyed alien Pleakley, and Kevin Michael Richardson boomed as the alien captain Gantu. Veteran actress Zoe Caldwell provided the authoritative voice of the Galactic Grand Councilwoman. Together, this cast balanced humor and sincerity, with many of them performing ad-libs that made it into the film. For example, McDonald's comedic improv added to Pleakley's quirky personality, and Carrere's emotional delivery made Nani's struggles especially poignant. Rounding out the creative team, composer Alan Silvestri and the music producers worked with Hawaiian chanter Mark Kiali Humalu to ensure the soundtrack respected Hawaiian culture while blending it with Elvis hits. In every sense, Lilo and Stitch was a product of passionate individuals, infusing the film with their personal touches, from Sanders' own voice work and drawings to local actors' cultural insights, making the final movie feel intimate and handcrafted. Production challenges and key decisions. During its development and production, roughly 1998 to 2002, Lilo and Stitch faced several challenges that required creative problem solving. One major constraint was its lower budget, approximately $80 million, quite modest compared to the previous Disney features of the 1990s. This tighter budget influenced many production decisions. As noted, the team found cost-efficient techniques, sticking to hand-drawn animation without costly CGI, simplifying character details, and reusing watercolor background techniques that, once mastered, proved efficient. Still, working with watercolors was initially risky. After the directors insisted on that approach, the Florida studio had to invest time in retraining artists and developing new pipeline methods, all under the pressure of a fixed budget and schedule. There were tense moments early on when managers in California doubted the Florida team's ability to pull off the watercolor plan in time, but the artists' dedication overcame this hurdle, turning a potential pitfall into a point of pride. In the end, the look of the film became one of its greatest assets, vindicating the gamble on an old technique. Another challenge was maintaining the film's creative vision against potential corporate interference. Because the project was developed far from the studio's Los Angeles headquarters, Sanders and DeBlois had a bit of a buffer from constant executive oversight. Tom Schumacher, who championed the project, cleverly shielded it by delaying high-level reviews until the story had taken firm shape. For much of the production, the filmmakers essentially worked under the radar in Orlando. We were the equivalent of a spy plane, being built at a secret hangar with a very elite group of people, Sanders said of the Florida studio's autonomy. This independence allowed some unorthodox choices to flourish. For example, the film's offbeat humor and occasionally dark edges were kept intact. Notably, Lilo and Stitch opens with Lilo innocently feeding a fish a peanut butter sandwich as an offering to calm the weather, and later shows Nani and Lilo arguing fiercely, scenes that are quirky and emotionally raw in ways Disney films usually weren't at the time. When executives finally saw the work in progress, they largely embraced it, giving notes without derailing the core story. One significant story edit did occur during test screenings. Originally, Stitch was even more destructive and mean early in the film. In one cut scene, he accidentally hurt Lilo's feelings by wrecking her handmade family photo. Feedback indicated this was too upsetting, so the filmmakers toned down Stitch's nastiness slightly to keep him sympathetic. This kind of adjustment ensured the film's emotional balance was just right. The production faced an unexpected external challenge in late 2001, the September 11th terrorist attacks. By that point, Lilo and Stitch was in its final stages, and it included a climactic action sequence that suddenly became problematic. In the original ending, Stitch and his allies commandeered a real Boeing 747 airliner and wove it through a city to chase Captain Gantu, a sequence meant to be exciting but lightheartedly cartoonish. After 9/11, showing a hijacked jumbo jet zooming between buildings was deemed too sensitive and eerily familiar. With only weeks left in production, Disney made the costly decision to revamp that entire sequence. The team reanimated the climax to have Stitch and company use Jumba's alien spacecraft instead of an airliner, altering backgrounds so the chase takes place through Kauai's mountains and clouds rather than city streets. The redesign required significant last-minute effort and expense, from redrawing action scenes to re-rendering the vehicle as an alien ship. Though keen viewers can still spot that the final spacecraft retains an engine shape reminiscent of a 747's jets as an homage. Despite the scramble, the change was executed seamlessly. Most audiences never knew a different ending had been planned until years later. Amazingly, even after this revision, the production came in slightly under budget, allowing the directors to use the remaining funds and time to animate a short epilogue photo montage showing Lilo, Nani, and Stitch's life as a newfound family. This delightful montage, depicting scenes like Stitch joining in beach picnics and Christmas celebrations with his adoptive family, was a last-minute addition made possible because the crew refused to let even a few minutes of available animation budget go to waste. Throughout production, the filmmakers also paid careful attention to cultural sensitivity and authenticity, an important decision given the Hawaiian setting. Sanders and DeBlois recognized, "We have no business telling a Hawaiian story unless they did their homework and showed respect." They consulted Hawaiian cultural experts and involved their Hawaiian voice actors, Karere and Lee, in tweaking the dialogue and scenes. For instance, they adjusted Lilo's hula dance scenes to accurately reflect hula school practices, and they included touches like Hawaiian language posters in the background and local customs, the concept of Ohana and the idea of Pudge the fish controlling the weather, which riffs on local storytelling. The portrayal of Nani and Lilo's struggles, living on a sparse income during an economic downturn in a small island community, was handled with realism and care. Balancing that economic hardship with the natural beauty of Kauai was a delicate task for the artists. In the end, Hawaiian viewers and many critics appreciated that the film treated the setting and people sincerely, avoiding making them mere exotic backdrop. The decision to cast actors of Hawaiian heritage for the key roles and to incorporate Hawaiian music and language paid off in an authenticity that was relatively new for Disney. Finally, one could say the biggest challenge the team took on was simply breaking the mold of Disney's typical formula. Lilo and Stitch is an unusual blend. Part sci-fi adventure with aliens and spaceships, part domestic drama about social workers and sisterly fights, part comedy that ranges from slapstick destruction to sharp-edged wit. Disney hadn't made a film quite like this before. In early development, there was even debate about whether Stitch should speak at all. At first, Sanders imagined Stitch might be a mostly mute character like Dumbo, who communicates only in sounds. He was going to be the equivalent of Dumbo. He would make noises but never verbalize, Sanders said of the initial plan. They soon realized, however, that giving Stitch a few lines of broken English, especially by the finale, was crucial to express his growth. Thus, iconic moments like Stitch haltingly saying, "I'm lost," and "family means nobody gets left behind," were added, creating some of the film's most heartfelt payoffs. These kinds of choices, to humanize an alien misfit and to tell a story about love and belonging without a classic villain, were risks at the time. But Disney's trust in the filmmakers and the team's commitment to their vision saw the project through challenges to completion. In June 2002, Lilo and Stitch was released to the world, looking and feeling exactly as its creators intended: funny, poignant, and utterly unique. Reception and legacy. Upon release, Lilo and Stitch was met with both critical praise and robust box office success, validating the gambles made during its creation. Critics lauded the film's originality, heart, and offbeat humor. On Rotten Tomatoes, it earned a 87% approval rating, with the consensus noting that edgier than traditional Disney fare, Lilo and Stitch explores issues of family while providing a fun and charming story. Renowned critic Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars, calling it one of the most charming feature-length cartoons of recent years. Funny, sassy, startling, original, and with 6 songs by Elvis. He appreciated that Lilo and Stitch doesn't get sickeningly sweet at the end, and that its humor and warmth appealed to adults as much as children. The Los Angeles Times likewise praised the movie's fresh tone, noting its unleashed, subversive sense of humor that's less corporate and more uninhibited than any non-Pixar Disney film in time. The review highlighted the film's hand-drawn watercolor look as a welcome throwback to classic animation, yet with a modern wit. Many reviewers pointed out how the focus on a non-traditional family and themes of loneliness and acceptance gave the film an emotional depth that stood out among early 2000s animated films. Importantly, Hawaiian critics and culture watchers responded positively to the respectful portrayal of island life and the use of native voice talent and music. The film's blend of zany sci-fi and sincere family drama, which had seemed risky, was often cited as its magic. The New York Times noted Disney had found a new twist on the family in family film with Lilo's unconventional Ohana. Audiences also embraced Lilo and Stitch enthusiastically. The film opened in the summer of 2002 and became a sleeper hit amid much bigger live-action blockbusters. It debuted at number 2 at the US box office, just behind Minority Report, and it stayed near the top of the charts for weeks, even as it faced competition from heavy hitters like Spider-Man, Star Wars, Attack of the Clones, and Men in Black Pod 2. Families were drawn to its lovable characters and positive message, making it a word-of-mouth success. Domestically, Lilo and Stitch earned about $145.8 million in the US and Canada, plus $127.3 million internationally, for a robust $273 million worldwide gross. This far exceeded its production budget and made it one of Disney's top-performing films of the 2000s. In fact, it was the second highest grossing animated film worldwide in 2002, behind only Ice Age. The film's popularity extended to home video as well, where Stitch's antics continued to win fans. At the 75th Academy Awards, Lilo and Stitch was nominated for Best Animated Feature, a testament to its quality, given that category was then only in its second year. It ultimately lost the Oscar to Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away, another critically beloved film. Nonetheless, the nomination cemented Lilo and Stitch's status as an artistic achievement. The movie also received several Annie Award nominations, including for Best Feature and for voice acting, and won an award for Best Character Animation. Perhaps more meaningfully, it won a place in the hearts of a generation of viewers. The legacy of Lilo and Stitch within Disney and animation culture is significant. Coming at a time when Disney's traditional 2D animation was in a decline, the early 2000s post-Renaissance era, Lilo and Stitch proved that a small, original story could captivate audiences in an age increasingly dominated by CG films. Its success made it a bright spot of that era, encouraging Disney to continue experimenting with original projects. The film's irreverent tone and stylized art proved influential. Later, Disney and Pixar films that focused on unconventional family units, Frozen, Moana, etc., or that blended humor with deeper emotional themes owe a nod to the path that Lilo and Stitch blazed. Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois' career trajectory after Lilo and Stitch also underscores its impact. The duo later co-created DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon, another tale of a boy and a creature forming an unlikely family. Many observers note the thematic and stylistic through line from Stitch to Dragon's Toothless. Within Disney, Stitch quickly became a merchandising superstar and an iconic character. His impish grin and big-eared blue design were instantly marketable, and Disney capitalized on his popularity with a flurry of follow-ups. Lilo and Stitch spawned a franchise. There were 3 direct-to-video DVD sequel films, as well as 3 animated television series. These sequels and series expanded Stitch's misadventures with other genetic cousins and new human friends, making Stitch one of the most enduring Disney characters outside of the princess lineup. Children who grew up in the 2000s often recognize Stitch as readily as Mickey Mouse, and his image can be found on everything from backpacks to theme park attractions. In fact, Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom even re-themed a ride into Stitch's Great Escape in 2004, reflecting the character's popularity. A live-action adaptation was greenlit as part of Disney's efforts to remake its animated classics, and it was released in 2025. This remake demonstrates the company's confidence that the original film's beloved story of family and friendship is truly timeless. Moreover, the phrase Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten, has entered pop culture lexicon as a quote synonymous with loyalty and love, often cited far beyond the movie. Lilo and Stitch's blend of humor and heart also paved the way for animation to tackle unconventional subjects. It showed that you could have a wacky alien comedy that also addresses social services and broken families, and audiences would follow you there. Animation historians often point to Lilo and Stitch as an example of Disney temporarily recapturing the spirit of innovation that marked its early years, by trusting individual artists' vision. As one retrospective article put it, Lilo and Stitch was a hand-drawn miracle, a film that defied the odds in its making and went on to charm the world. Its legacy lives on not just in sequels or merchandise, but in the hearts of fans who cherish it as a story about outsiders who find each other and create a family against all odds. A message as meaningful today as it was in 2002.